So I just finished a new one, the Blade Itself, the first novel of the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. Um, so a friend of mine gifted me all three books in this trilogy in this nice 10th anniversary hardcover edition. So I just finished this one. I find these are very much a traditional fantasy series. Um, there's a lot of tropes in there. Um, I don't think any tropes are subverted, but they are uh, altered a bit, spiced up, changed enough. There's enough in this. There's enough tropes in this that it's familiar, but there's enough difference in there to make it interesting, and it's also very well written, and it's less. I don't want to say less story based. Certainly this book. I don't know about the rest of the trilogy, but it's way more character intensive. It's all about the characters. So the sort of the setting tropes don't really matter as much because it's not about the setting; it's about the characters. Um, but yeah, like when I first started reading it, and they talk about the pale skinned, large, hairy barbarians who live in the frozen north, I was like, okay, here we go. And the dark skinned empire in the south where it's hot and dry and they have slavery and like geographically it's like just such a traditional fantasy story. Um, and how the world is like, they call it the circle of the world. It's like this sort of kind of a circle of different continents that are each their own islands, and each island sort of represents or has a different people and represents different climate. And our story centers around the people who are living at the center one. Um, um, but there's some pretty cool background lore. Like from what I gather from this book, there was this guy named Eus who might have been a god or the god who had four children. One of them was named, but was just mentioned as being a strong person. Um, the two that are mentioned a lot are, I want to say Canada. It's not Canada. It's Canadius. Now it sounds like I'm saying Canadian. The Master Maker, he's known as. And then there's Juvens, who is like the foremost mage, wizard, magic guy. And there was some sort of a kerfuffle between the two of them. I thought it was going to be like, on the one hand we have the super magic guy, and on the other hand the master maker, the artificer, who's all about science and technology, and then that's the dichotomy we're rolling with. But it seems like the master maker also was like super into magic potentially, but I could be misreading that. This is stuff I just sort of tried to draw out from this first book. And it seems like the master maker killed his brother Juvens, and Juvens had 11, maybe 12 apostles, no, apprentices who were who were all magi. And when Juvens was killed, these magi went and avenged him by killing Canadius, whatever, the master maker. And then there's something with the master maker's daughter, who one character tells us that the master maker himself threw her off a balcony and killed her while he was being pursued and hunted down by these magi. But it's sort of led to believe that either she jumped because of the magi chasing her, or the magi threw her off and killed her themselves. But anyways, that's just one mystery to unravel. And so this all took place centuries and centuries ago, before our story begins. But it whatever happened back then is sort of what our story is about now. It's very much, this is very much the Fellowship of the Rings. So like in Lord of the Rings, there was the war with Sauron and the Ring and all that ages ago, and that starts our adventure in the first Fellowship of the Ring. In this book, it is very much Fellowship of the Ring style. Plot-wise, nothing really happens. Like I said, we get a hint about that sort of background, but it's introducing our characters, and it's bringing them all together to go on their quest. Like I said, very traditional fantasy. Other than our main cast of characters, we do have this sort of crew of, by the end of the book, only 5, I think, of these Northmen. So again, the big, hairy barbarian savages living to the north, who were led by or were friends with, but also sometimes enemies with one of the main characters who we'll get to. But we have this sort of group that's in the north, and they are exiles. There is this king in the north who has united the whole north and is attacking the sort of the Union, which is like the medieval European kingdom / empire. So the north has attacked the Union, and these exiles are like, well, we'll fight on the side of the Union because we don't like this guy that's exiled us. We used to work for him, but he's a bad dude. So there's also these guys, interestingly. But besides them, our story just focuses around a number of characters, some more important than others. Our sort of final fellowship that at the end of this book is about to head off on their quest or just left on their quest includes, I'll start with the ones that I don't really know much about and I'm not really sure are super important, but there's this guy, Brother Longfoot, who is a navigator. And he's sort of traveled all over the place, and he's all about traveling, and he knows how to travel, and that's his whole thing. He's introduced late, and we don't really know much about him, other than he's kind of like silly and goofy and kind of weird, and thinks very highly of himself, but in like a sort of a silly way, not anyways. And then there's the apprentice who is with us through the whole book, Malachus K or Kai or Quay or whatever his name is. He's sort of like a failed wizard. I mean, he's like a wizard in training, but he's not very good at it, and he needs to study more. And he's like kind of depressed, and he's strange. And then we have our main characters, including one who was strangely enough introduced halfway through the book and then sort of became a main character. What's her name? Vero Malgin. So she is interesting. She's from the south. And she meets with a wizard there, Tolway, who brings her to meet with everyone else. So she was everyone else naturally gathered together in this central location, but she was introduced halfway through, had to have another wizard go and fetch her and bring her up to meet with everyone else, which was kind of strange. And she's like a super angry murder hobo. She just wants to kill everyone. She's very angry. She's a former slave. So like vengeance is on her mind, understandably, but she's very angry, and she comes from a certain race of people, I think, that are special in some way, potentially. We don't know much about that yet. She has yellow eyes. I mean, that to me is like, oh, okay, there's something special about you because you have yellow eyes. She's also colorblind, which apparently means something. I don't know what it means. But yeah, she's a very good fighter, very good killer. And what was the other thing about her? Anyway, she just likes killing. So I think her name is Vero. I can't even remember. Anyways, let's see if I can look it up. Vero Malgin. She calls everyone pinks. Oh, Pharaoh. Not Vero, Pharaoh. That was close. She calls everyone pinks because she has brown skin. She sees everyone else as having pink skin. Anyway, so that's her. There is another character, Jezzael Dan Luther, who in any other fantasy would be the protagonist. I could see him very much being a Sanderson character. He's like very young. He comes from nobility, and he thinks very highly of himself. And he likes this girl, but she's a commoner, and he's like, I can't marry her. Oh, but I love her so much. And he's a fencer, so during this book, his whole thing is this fencing competition, which he's like, oh, I'm just doing it for my family, and I don't even care about fencing, and I just want to drink and party and be with my friends. Then he finally decides to train, and he gets to the final fight, and he would have lost, but another character, the wizard, sort of wizardly empowers him so that he wins, and he doesn't realize that he didn't win on his own strength. So this just boosts his ego even more, and he thinks he's so great and so charming and so everything. But it's written in a way that, like I said, if this was a Sanderson character or a main character in any other book that was written from his POV, you wouldn't realize how insufferable he is. But I mean, it's written from his POV, but it's still the way it's written. It's like he seems like such a little baby man child, like just not a character that you hate, just one that you're like, grow up. Like, it'll be interesting to see where he goes, but this character is just like, he's just an awful teenage boy. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, he's kind of funny in the way he's written. He's well written. So I guess he's taking that trope of like the dashing young military officer who's brilliant with a sword and very handsome, and turning it into this guy's kind of useless, but he thinks he's great, and he's got a way to go. The romance stuff was kind of like, I don't know where that's gonna go, because he's like, oh, will you wait for me? And she's like, yeah, I'll wait for you, but I don't know where it's gonna go. Anyways, and our next character is Logan Ninefingers, who is one of these Northmen. It's kind of a neat cultural thing about the Northmen, is that they have the named men and those who are unnamed. So you win glory in battle, and then you get your name. And I don't know if that's a title you get. Like, I don't think he was nobody, and then once he was named, he was Logan. I think like Ninefingers was his name, or the Bloody Nine, which is another moniker he has. So he's interesting. He's sort of the northern barbarian, the great big berserker fighter guy who's won so many battles in one-on-one combats, and he's the greatest fighter in the realm. But he's a really, like I said, it's that trope, but the character's he's very different. He's very thoughtful. He's very wise, I would say. He takes his time about things. He doesn't want to fight, and when he does, like, you think, oh, he's this great fighter. He's going to come out on top every time. Every single fight he's had in this book, it's like touch and go. Like, is he going to come out alive? He gets beat up a lot, and at the end of it, he always says, "I'm alive. I'm still alive," as if like kind of surprised, but reminding himself, "I'm still alive." So I really like Logan. He's really well written. Sort of, I guess it does kind of subvert that trope of the like northern barbarian. But there is a bit of a twist. So at the first, he is known to talk to the spirits. He can talk to the spirits, which I guess not everyone can do. Magic, because it's a fantasy, like your traditional fantasy book, magic has retreated from the world. So the fact that he can talk to spirits is like kind of a big thing. Nobody really believes him or knows what talking to spirits are. He also does one weird thing where he sort of inhales a fire spirit from the campfire as it's dying, and like holds it under his tongue, and then when he gets attacked by someone, he spits the fire spirit out and catches the guy on fire. So he's got some sort of magical thing about him. But the big thing is, at the end of this book, he's fighting and he's about to like die. Basically, he's so exhausted after this huge fight, and he says something like, "No, I thought I was free of it," or whatever, and then seemingly another personality takes over him and his body, and he just stands up, and he no longer feels pain or exhaustion or anything, and this, whatever is possessing him at this point, just goes berserk and just starts killing for fun, and is just loving life, loving killing and blood and gore, and just having a crazy time of it. So Logan has sort of this split personality thing where half of him is this crazy murder hobo, berserker, and the other half is this more calm, more rational guy. So he's really interesting. So penultimately, if I can use that word, if that's a word, we have the guy bringing everyone together, this wizard named Baez. So he is the first of the magi. So way back when Juvens, the first wizard mage magic guy, died, and his 11 magi avenged him. Baez is the first. So Baez, he's centuries old, but he's not the traditional fantasy wizard of like he's not a Gandalf who's like, oh, I'm very old and I'm gonna gather all these people together for a quest. He's he's old in the sense that he's seen so many generations come and go. I don't want to say he doesn't value life, but he sort of sees everyone as doesn't see everyone as children, but he kills one person just because he's like, okay, I'm angry, I'm fed up, I'm done with you. Kills a person, just straight up kills a dude. Um, so yeah, so he's not like a super like. There's a lot of morally gray in this book. Like Logan, who I'm like, oh yeah, I like Logan. He's like a nice guy. He stabs I think it was 14-year-old boy in the throat. And Logan's friends also smash another 12-year-old in the back of the head with an axe because they're like, well, we can't take him with us, and the kid's like, well, don't kill me. They're like, sorry, we gotta kill you. So it's not a dark, gritty book, but there are like, I think, realistic levels of like horrible, horrible things that are happening that don't necessarily make the characters bad, but the characters aren't necessarily good either. And Baez is another one of these characters. So he's the one who's sort of orchestrating, getting everyone together. There's this tower in the city, the central city, the capital, that the Master Maker had built, like this huge skyscraper of a structure. And Baez has the key to it. It's never been unlocked in centuries. And Baez opens it, goes in, and gets this box he needs. What that for, we don't know. This book is very much just an introduction. So he's like a powerful wizard. He can do sorts of magical stuff. The magic in this is interesting. So it can alter people's minds. Like we're introduced to some sort of a witch from the north, who's with the king in the north. She can like manipulate people's minds and get people to love her or feel comfortable with her. Baez himself, he can catch things on fire, cause things to explode. He doesn't like shoot fireballs out of his hand or anything. It's kind of like a transmutation thing where he can transmute like Yulwei, the other wizard, transmutes one guy's bones into water. So the guy just like bloop, collapses. It's just kind of gross. So magic is interesting in this world. And they said that magic is touching the other side. So it seems like there's sort of two dimensions. There's the world, and then the not underworld, but the other side. And it's through the connection of those two that power is transferred. And there's always a cost, but we're never told about the cost. And a wizard's power comes with understanding. So the more a wizard understands the world, the more they know how to change or alter it, and thus perform the art, capital A, aka magic. So that's interesting. So that's this Baez guy. Really cool. I really like him as is really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting characters. It's a great character book. But yeah, Baez is very interesting. I'm interested to see where he goes because, like I said, he's not like. I guess he is the good guy, but all these good guys still do horrible things, presumably for the greater good or presumably just for their own needs. I don't know. So finally, the final character is my favorite. This guy, Sand Dan Glokta, which is kind of hard to say. So he's an inquisitor working for the Inquisition, who are kind of like the police force / detective / secret police / spy network / torturers. He tortures a lot. So again, another guy who he's not really a good guy because he tortures a lot of people. Some of them are like, I guess not innocent, but because like no one's innocent in this book. But yeah, he's a torturer. But he's got a very interesting backstory. So he was the Luther, the super dashing young soldier who was brilliant with a sword, and he won this contest, and he was like the greatest swordsman. But he got captured during this war and was held in the Emperor's dungeons for 2 years and was tortured brutally. And then, for whatever reason, was let out. And is crippled because of that. He from both his wounds in battle that never properly healed, and the torture that was inflicted upon him. Like, he had parts cut off, he had his teeth chiseled out, only some of them, but enough that he can never chew. He can't walk really well. He needs a cane. He's in constant pain, but he takes it like laconically, I guess, morbidly. He's very funny. He's like, everything he does, he's like, well, what are they gonna do? Kill me? Like, okay. He sort of accepts his lot in life and just sort of goes along with it. He's like, oh, I'm gonna be in horrible pain. Oh well, like, that's life. So yeah, he's like perpetually in pain. But he is running around doing investigations and stuff. He's really good at his job because he's not corrupt. I wouldn't say he's a good guy, but he's not corrupt. Like, you can't buy him because he's like, the only thing I want is my old life back and my old body back, but I'm never going to get it, and I know I'm not. So I'm just going to do my job and try and solve these mysteries. So at the end of the book, he is told, basically given carte blanche to go to Dagosta, this city that is on the continent with the Empire, but is sort of on a peninsula and has been captured by the Union. So it's part of the Union, but had been an Empire city, and the Empire's gearing up to take it back because the Empire's in the south. The Union's now at war with the North. So the Empire in the south sees this as their chance to take Dagosta back, and the Archlector, the head of the Inquisition, sends Glokta down there and saying, okay, look, you're going to be in charge, take care of it, keep this city safe. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, so I really like Glokta. He's funny. And I think that's all the characters. But like I said, this book is very much just an introduction to these characters and sort of a bit of world building, but it's mostly about these characters. It's a really good read. It's really well written for like his first book. I'm excited to see if the next two get better. Not that this is a bad one at all. Yeah, very enjoyable read. So this is the beginning of the first law.